Welcome, everyone. Welcome, North Bennett Street School alumni and friends. You are the stakeholders in our health and future, the future of our mission and our institution. We want to keep you informed about how your school is doing, introduce new leadership, share a glimpse into near-term and future priorities. My name is Rob O'Dwyer. I'll be your host this evening. I'm also the Director of Admissions and Enrollment for the accredited career training programs here. I'd like to take a minute just to thank the partners in craft, our generous donors, partners, alumni, and employers. Thank you. I would also like to tell you a little bit about this evening, how this will unfold. The first portion of the program will have a conversation with school leadership. Later, we'll bring in two instructors, Emily Townsend from Piano Technology and Peter Smith from Carpentry. Then we'll have a Q&A at the end, and we'll invite people to ask questions. And then we'll give everybody a chance to come into the room for an informal reception so we can all see each other if you like. I do want to just share with everyone that we're recording this, so if people are unable to join us, they'll be able to see this afterwards. And right now, I would like to ask our leadership if they would please introduce themselves, and if we can start with our president, Sarah Turner, please.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks so much for hosting. It just makes it so easy and so natural. And I know so many people in the room know Rob, so it's great to have him with us. My name is Sarah Turner, and I sort of figured this out today. I'm starting my 4th year at North Bennett Street School. Time really flies. And a lot of you know I come from a background in crafts. So I was trained as a metalsmith and a jeweler, and worked for a long time in that field, worked as an educator, worked in leadership in higher ed, and those things kind of all aligned to bring me here. And one of the things I've been thinking about is, how does a craft education shape leadership? Because I think that does happen. So I have a lot of fun thinking about how craft has to balance legacy with tradition and innovation, and so does leadership, especially for a school like North Bennett Street School. And craft has to be responsive. I'm thinking about all the furniture makers, the ceramicists. They know that the material doesn't always do what you want it to do. You have to be responsive to it. And so I think about responsive leadership, sort of like a crafts person might think about responsive material. And anyway, those are all the things I love about this work and being at a school like this. And I'm glad to get to share how it's doing with all of you. So thank you. Thanks for being here.
Genie, can we hear from you, please?
Sure. I'm a fairly recent graduate of the cabinet and furniture making program back in 2016. And after that, I taught for a year the middle school students that come from the North End to North Bennett Street, and assisted in some CE classes. And that year I also joined the board and helped with the campaign for scholarships, and then was on the search committee for Sarah. Yay. And then I was vice chair for 2 years with Lindsa, and here I am stepping up into a new role. So I think I will do anything for this school.
Love it.
That's great. And Lindsa, would you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So good evening, everybody. My name is Lindsa Mcintyre, and I am vice chair of the board. And this is my second go round on the board, and truly in love with all of what North Bennett Street School has to offer. I come from a background of public education in urban backgrounds, and have had almost every job there is to have in a school system, starting from being a teacher to a guidance counselor, a clinical coordinator, a director of instruction, an assistant school head, a school leader, and finally a secondary school superintendent. So I come with the lens of what should happen before someone gets access to North Bennett Street School, and how do we ready them for such a wonderful opportunity?
That's great. Thank you, Lindsa. So I have a few questions that I would like to ask the three of you. And if we can start with you, Lindsa, what have the past 2 years revealed about the core values and strengths of North Bennett Street School? I think you're on mute.
I'm there now. So what a great question. And thank you for that, Rob. You know, I think the past few years has had an impact on how we do business globally, no matter what sector you're in, industry, business, education. And so when I think about that in terms of the work that has to happen at North Bennett Street School, it says to me very clearly and very loudly that this is an opportunity to put people ahead of power. And we have learned through all the globe media, all the local news, that many strong industries are suffering because people aren't at the center of the work. And so now we're transitioning how we look at the things we do in terms of not just what we have to offer, but who is offering it. And so I think people are as important in this work as whatever content we're delivering, even our mission, our vision, it all centers around people. And the pandemic has given us an opportunity to really think about the people. And so for me, that's important because we cannot serve without identifying the needs of the people who are offering those opportunities. And again, conversations around inclusion have been growing all around us, particularly highlighting the disparate effects of Black and Brown folks in industry, in schooling, and in business. And this just allows us an opportunity to just think holistically around how do we create a more inclusive, a more loving community where we're not just paying attention to what we're teaching, but we're paying attention to the whole person and how they bring themselves to the work, socially, emotionally, physically, their wellness, their spirit, and not separating them from who they really are, but allowing them to be authentic in the way in which they engage. And then rediscovering who we serve. And is that the population that we want to serve? Or can we make that a more inclusive, diverse body of learners, of participants? And if so, how do we do that? What are the steps we need to take to change the diversity components of our institution? And also thinking about the why. Why are we doing this? And coming from a place of passion, purpose, with a real respect for people. And I'll say this too, we are in a position now where it is, if not now, when can we extend ourselves to be greater than we thought ourselves to be and have a larger impact, not only globally, but locally? Who's in our backyard? How do we create access to those that are around us to such a wonderful experience? And that all comes with really thinking about our skill development, our youth development, what pathways can we create to make better access and opportunities for those who have been left out, marginalized, disenfranchised, but truly have talents, gifts, and genius to add to the beauty of the work that we do. So I'll end with saying this: we really need to think in terms of the work we do, not just about cognitive abilities, but combining our cognitive understandings with the idea that socio-emotional wellness, socioeconomics, and sociocultural understandings play a large role at the intersection of teaching and learning.
Lindsa, thank you so much. Genie, can I ask you the same question? What have the past 2 years revealed about the core values and strengths of North Bennett Street School?
Sure. Well, Lindsa's remarks are tough ones to follow, but I think I'll make some comments pretty specifically to North Bennett and say that I've seen incredible resilience and determination and even courage in how our faculty and students have responded to the pandemic. And I've seen our staff and faculty and board rise together collectively, as Lindsa mentioned, to the greater call for social justice and equity. And so as a result, our work has dug in to make sure we're supporting everyone and that our school is even more welcoming than it already is. Zoom has surprisingly brought our board together, first around important decisions like COVID, but then as we dug into important diversity, equity, and inclusion work, online learning, and now strategic planning. And so as people became separated by the pandemic, I feel that our board members found community as we gathered around something we really all love and care deeply about, the school. So the board got to know each other better in our work. And as we added more meetings, we had excellent attendance because of Zoom. So I'll thank Zoom. But finally, our financial health is really solid. Thanks, of course, to the government's COVID relief funds, which offset our losses in tuition. We're not without challenges going forward in terms of regaining enrollment, but we've had some really exciting developments in philanthropy, particularly in this last year. We've had the best year ever in fundraising at all levels. We've had our largest bequest. We've had a multi-year gift go to online learning research, and we've had a $2.5 million unrestricted foundation grant to our endowment. So I'll end that we have a lot to be thankful for, given what's happened all in the last 2 years.
That's great. Thank you, Jeannie. A lot of great points there. You know, you mentioned enrollment, and you know, the pandemic, I think, has been a bit of a challenge for higher ed in general. I feel like for such a small, specialized place, even though we've taken a bit of a hit, I think that there's a lot of good work that's happening here across many of the things that both you and Lindsa has mentioned. Local outreach, regional outreach, the scholarships that have really grown and helped to support people being here are all pieces of what the enrollment recovery is, and how that impacts the larger scope of the topics that you both brought up here. Sarah, can I please ask you that same question about the past 2 years? And I can't believe it's your 4th year already.
I know. It's like, I loved holding on to when it was my first year and my second year, because I could be not naive to so many things. And now I know too much. I think, you know, what I've noticed is how adaptive and generative the school has been, really game to kind of try things, try some new approaches, a new reach, start to think about new programs. I feel like, you know, in the first year, we were really in a response mode. Now that we're past this sort of sheer emergency response, we're really starting to plant the seeds, I think, this year that are going to grow into our long-term efforts. So Jeannie mentioned that we're moving into strategic planning. I think we've been able to use this year as sort of a bridge year between a crisis response and now going into long-term planning. And I'm watching these seeds get planted, and I think, like, you know, ideas for our future and for our growth don't just fall out of the sky. A lot of times those ideas come from the things that we're trying and testing now. They come from our faculty, they come from our staff. So I'm thinking about things like how much outreach has happened, even when we're sort of dislocated. Our In the Making series, I think, is a good example of sort of a seed that's gotten planted, where we could have so many virtual conversations. I think we've done almost 40 sessions at this point. Live streaming those. I think we've had over 600 people attending them from 9 different countries. And we've been able to bring voices that we haven't heard as much from. So underrepresented voices, voices from other fields. Just an example of kind of a pivot moment that's really turned into something substantial that I think we can learn from and take forward. You know, Jeannie talked about the learning and digital tools that we've been using, and those too are planting seeds. You know, we did the online continuing ed pilot courses, and we'll pick those back up in the summertime. So things that were initially an emergency response can turn to something greater. And as Lindsa said, I think there's just been such an emphasis on reaching people. really thinking about our role to stay as a place of community connection, even though we had to be physically dislocated. So thinking about how we can connect our community, extend our community, re-engage it and rebuild it. Really thinking of North Bennett as a hub, a place for a lot of people to come together, to learn, to connect, to take skills, to develop as an individual. And that's, that's been the silver lining of this, I think.
I agree. I think that the digital world and how we've kind of been able to turn outward and be welcoming of people. There's so many good examples, the things you've mentioned about in the making, the portrait project, if anyone has seen that, is just a really great way to see who's here. We're such a, Lindsa mentioned sort of the like the being people focused, the humanity piece, and that's one of the things I love about North Bennett Street School is, there's everyone here has such a rich story of where they've come from, what they're doing now, and what they want to do. I think that's great. We did the virtual open house. We've also been doing online skill tests, which I wasn't sure would be possible, and have been running info sessions as well. Lindsa, can I ask you what opportunities do you see that we've either seized or could seize from the pandemic?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And thank you for asking. I think now we are really focused on challenging the status quo and understanding that that's no longer going to grow us to be the best we can be. And so we're thinking now in terms of really being responsive in terms of shaping our community to meet the needs of the times, right? And building the capacity, not settling for as is, but continuing to grow and develop and change and evolve to be the best we can be, all while focusing on equity and inclusion as key tenets of the work that is in front of us. And I will tell you from where I sit, diversification on the board is a clear example of that in action. I am inside now, and I had been in the past looking in from the outside, just marveling in all of the wonders of North Bennett Street School, but not really knowing how to access it. But through our inclusive understandings, here I am. And not just me, we're broadening our understanding of others, not just this monolithic understanding, but we're including the voices of women, people of color, of others, not just your standardized, institutionalized white man in the suit. Not that they don't matter, they're just as important, but others are as well. And so just really looking at the values that other people can bring and fostering the spirit of inclusion all along the way. We've been working on developing partnerships, pivoting from the classroom to online. We talked a little bit about that. YouTube presentations, really diversifying the way in which we capture the attention of others and invite them into this community, getting the word out, profiling, and raising our presence in the broader community, and letting folks know that we're not keeping this a secret anymore. Hey, here's the best kept secret, and sharing it. I also would say, this is a time where we're reminded of the importance, once again, of taking care of one another, appreciating one another, generating will, rewarding folks, acknowledging them, letting them know they matter so that they can continue to foster their purpose and their contributions. And finally, I'll just add that we've clearly developed a focus on social justice, a focus on equity. I think everyone is aware of that. And that happened just prior to the pandemic, but that just illuminated it once that happened. And it has definitely had a disproportionate impact on some of us as opposed to others. But because we are in the midst of understanding the role of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, we are counteracting the effects of the pandemic by valuing each and every one of us as we make our contributions and we grow our North Bennett Street School environment.
That is wonderful. Lindsa, thank you so much. Being here, for the people that can be in the building and see what's happening here, this is real magic. This energy is here. All of this positivity is happening here, and I'd so appreciate all of your words, Lindsa. I'd like to shift a little bit and just talk about mapping out our future. And I'd like to ask Genie. Genie, can you tell us what excites you about the strategic planning process?
Everything is exciting about it, Rob. Right before the pandemic, we were about to dig into it, and finally, we're in the middle of it. So our consultant, Susan Nelson, and her team have spent the last 5 months conducting interviews, both internally and externally, asking, who are we? What is our reputation? How might we extend our reach? How can we be the best version of ourselves? And so now our dedicated team, which is made up of board members and staff and faculty, are about to dig into and focus on this month some of the tantalizing opportunities of new possibilities. So things like, what could be our new revenue streams, new programs, online teaching opportunities? Can we extend our reach locally in Boston into the Boston public schools? Can we extend our reach nationally and internationally, where we've always attracted students, but can we further expand our presence? And what types of students do we hope to attract? What is our best financial model? And all while we explore these exciting new opportunities, we have to remember that strategic planning is often focused on current strengths. So what do we do really well? And how can we just do that a bit better, in terms of what we offer and teach? So how can we pay faculty and staff more, improve our benefits, improve their current student experience, improve employment opportunities for new graduates? All of our full-time programs are currently having positive profit margins, which we learned from Susan Nelson, which is awesome. But what criteria should we use when we evaluate them? So lots of stimulating questions that are being asked and dug into. And I'm just particularly grateful that Susan Nelson and her team are firmly rooting their approach in financial analysis and financial planning, so that any decisions that we make and any pursuits we might consider are firmly rooted in this viable financial model that we will develop. So I'm definitely excited, Rob.
Thank you, Jeannie. Sarah, can I ask you what excites you about the strategic planning process?
Yeah, I think I'll probably reveal sort of, my administrator, like geeky side when I say this, but listening to Jeannie makes me think about it. I think one of the things I've liked is the process. We've really been able to engage the fullness of the North Bennett Street School community in the process. And I felt like I was really, really fortunate that when I stepped into this position, so many relationships existed at the school, so many partnerships, so many advocates, so many volunteers with so much different kinds of expertise, so that when we need thinking partners, they're right at our fingertips. We have just an incredible kind of rich resource of thinking partners and people who will challenge us and think differently with us. And that's been, I think, one of the really interesting parts of the process. I think the other things are, I talked about the best ideas often come from the people who are doing the day-to-day work. So hearing from faculty, hearing from staff about the things that they'd like to see move forward. And I've, of course, also been thinking, I'm always aware of sort of where we are on a continuum, in the sense that we're able to focus on expansive programming and expansive new opportunities now because of the work that came before us. And so I think of this chapter of strategic planning really being about program and people, but that's in part because the resources were so gathered in advance, the resources around scholarship, the resources around endowment, the resources of this building and this facility. And so now we have this as really a platform to take advantage of and to increase programming. And so I think so much about Miguel's leadership as an architect and a former business owner and a craftsperson, and how he harnessed so much. And then the school turned to me, a craftsperson and an educator, and I can kind of bring a different component to that. So I really think about the strategic plan as not just this moment, but galvanizing the work from before, looking forward. So, that's exciting to me. I think that's makes you feel like you're a part of something much bigger than just the moment.
That's great. Sarah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to take the time now to shift a little bit to a Q&A section for our participants. And at the same time, I would like to invite our faculty guests to come on. That's Peter Smith. He is the head of the Carpentry program, and Emily Townsend, who is a faculty member in piano technology.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome, Peter and Emily.
And if participants want to use the chat function to ask questions, you can do that. And then I would like to just pose a question for both faculty members here. This is a moment when people are thinking of coming to your programs for training, when people are taking a big risk in changing their lives. This is something I think that's been historic and organic on many layers, but also because of the pandemic, there has been the concept of the Great Resignation or redirection. How are you seeing this in the students that you have? Is this something that is a shift that you notice? Are there some stories that you might be able to share about how those people are making those decisions and managing in your programs? And can we start with you, Emily?
Sure. I thought about that a lot as both Lindsa and Genie were speaking, actually, about how we've really kind of come together as a community and gotten a lot closer. I feel like the type of student that has come to North Bennett Street School the last couple of years is somebody that is taking a little extra risk and somebody that has to really want it, even more so than the type of student that we normally get. We get really great, really motivated students, but in the last couple of years, it's really been a group of people that know they're taking this really seriously, or else they wouldn't be here. And at the same time, they also all know it's really interesting. Every class has its own kind of culture and its own kind of community. And these last couple of years, as we've been in the pandemic, it's like it's impossible to ignore that we're all dealing with something really big and we're all going through something. And that means that we're all really pretty nice to each other and pretty supportive. And it's been pretty cool. Like I had a student that slipped on the ice on the way to school yesterday, and the class really rallied around this person and made sure that they had some place to stay, and they just more so than usual, we really do, it's still this we're all in this together kind of mentality, and it's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you, Emily. What about yourself, Peter?
Yeah, the Great Resignation is definitely part of that retraining and jumping to a new career. So I have a student, a female student, who left government and the bureaucracy of government and a contractor for government and all that entails. And they wanted to pursue their love of design with a tool belt on. So you got to picture not just a computer, but tool belt, hammer, and be able to engage with the built environment. She had been doing this a little bit, and she has some clients in California that she's helping to design with, but she wants to partner with a local good contractor who will recognize that she wants to continue with the tool belt on and also be part of a bigger picture of design. So a lot of people are taking something that they loved. A lot of students are taking something that they loved, but they weren't sure what to do with it. And then either through Google, they discover North Bennett, or friends or just word of mouth, and they end up realizing that what they really want to do is work with their hands. And so we have students just like Madeline, who is transitioning from a government job. We have students that are, we have a mason who wanted to go into carpentry and ramp up that skill set. The vets are always a fantastic retooling, and that's its own great storyline there of just what they've been up to. And so it is pretty amazing to see in my department where they start out with, and everyone that starts the program, it's almost universal. No one walks in there without stress, right? It's the first day, it's the North End, it's a big change, it's all new tools, and it's just it's a wonderful experience to see them just really mature and grow in 2 months. They go from not knowing the tools to knowing the tools, and it's just fantastic to see where they are at the end of 9 months in my program. And
I'd like to stay with you, Peter, for a minute. And I did invite some questions on the chat. I'd like to stay with faculty for a minute on some of these threads. And then if anyone wants to answer in the chat, you can do that. I'm asking my panel here if you have any interest. Otherwise, we'll address those questions just in a few minutes when we're a little further along in the conversation with faculty. Peter, I wanted to ask you about the carpentry program and the employer networks. I know that you, as a graduate, went out into the field for a while, and then coming back as an instructor, a lot of these networks, I'm pretty familiar with sort of how people are getting work before graduation, but would you please share with us your insights there?
Well, I'll just give you very real world, like last week, so a student, a math teacher, great resignation, going into carpentry, right? So great student, and they did the research to find 5 higher end contractors. That's really who we're trying to get our students employed by, somebody that cares about the worker, has the benefits to back it up, and the upward mobility of skill, task, position. So this student reached out and ended up getting like 2 or 3 interviews. So she's having the problem of how do you decide, and so we had a guest, one of the contractors came in and spoke to the whole class, because he's I best described as a social media influencer right in Boston. So he has a podcast and everything that goes with that. And so he talked to the students, and then they sat and they interviewed for an hour, and it went really well. And that kind of highlights, one, the name recognition of North Bennett, right? So when I graduated from Preservation Carpentry in 2004, I would not interview with anybody that had never heard of North Bennett. Because if you hadn't heard of North Bennett, well, what are you reading? What are you researching? And then the students, they can plug into the job board and the alumni base. And I tell all my students that you would have to work hard at not wanting a job right now in carpentry, right? So we have students that have the problem of too many job offers. And that's always something that has to be taken seriously and worked through. I thought COVID was going to hurt the job offerings, but as we all now realize, it's just exploded the job offerings, and the wages have gone up with it in the last 2 years. So that's a whole nother topic, but yeah.
Peter, thank you. Emily, if I could ask you, I feel like over the past year, Piano Technology has hosted a number of successful virtual events. Can you share with us your experience there, how maybe that's pulled the community closer, what kind of impact you've seen from that?
Yeah, we've done kind of some smaller scale and some bigger scale stuff in that arena. So one thing that students always enjoy is when alumni come back to visit and share their life experience after graduation and say, yes, it's all going to be okay. You're going to get a job. You're going to have work. It's out there. It's real. And it's great. And our visitor policy over the last couple of years prevented a lot of that. And so we started a program called Fridays with Friends, and we invited alumni to come in, and we set up a conference call microphone. So it's like they were in the room with us, even though they were on the TV. And we had some of these alumni conversations. And it was great. We weren't as restricted by who was in Boston or who was coming through Boston. We could really reach out to our whole network and get people that represented different career paths, different groups, bring in more diverse people to put in front of the students to see as role models and examples in that way. And so that was fun on kind of a smaller scale. And last May, we organized a virtual conference, which was originally just going to be for our currently enrolled students, because we every year have taken our students to a regional convention in Pennsylvania or New Hampshire or somewhere, so that they can network and attend courses from all kinds of different instructors. And it's a really worthwhile thing. And we were acutely feeling the loss of all those types of events being canceled. And so we thought, well, let's just bring in a whole bunch of guest instructors over a few days. And then we said, well, why don't we invite all of our alumni to come as well? And then the next thing we knew, we had, I want to say 85 people registered from 8 or 9 different countries. And it was a really cool thing. We had 3 days worth of classes and 18 different sessions with all kinds of people presenting, all kinds of people attending. And it was pretty exciting. We're hoping to do it again. We're kind of just starting to get that thought process underway. But it's made all kinds of things possible and put all kinds of people in front of our students that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do.
Thanks, Emily. I was able to participate in a few events, and I feel like, as the recruiter for the programs, a lot of times we'll talk in terms of a community of competitors. We don't necessarily have rivals that we're, trying to, get people to come here and not another place. And there's a person in Canada, the name escapes me right now because it was a while ago, but they were doing something within piano technology education and had the idea just to invite as many people from around the world that are connected to piano technology to just come and share what it is we offer and why. And I think I did that with Debbie early on in the pandemic, and it was a lot of fun to do. Yeah, it is fascinating in a place that is so tangible, how this digital layer really can reach people and engage people. I'm going to jump over to the chats here. Let me see, I've got a question from Kenneth White about the middle school programs. And I want to say when we were up and running before the pandemic, we were connected to 3 different schools in a few different mediums: bookbinding, jewelry making, and woodworking. I actually know as a parent, some of my children's friends that go to St. John's, all the people are so fond of the experience and look forward to it, unless they're the only people that are telling me. And then I would say for the pandemic, we had to take a break there. And as was mentioned by Sarah, Genie, and Lindsa, this is a huge opportunity area that I think strategic planning is addressing, not only with local schools, but maybe beyond that, and with young people in general, about exposure to craft and to problem solving. And I look forward to what those things might be. There is a question from Vin Kennedy. Vin, great to see you here.
Hi, Vin. It's great that you're here.
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of working with Vin when he applied, and I'll just share with everyone here. I'm here 11 years. Vin was the only person that I interviewed, and I felt like he was the one interviewing me. I left and I was like, wow. Vin has some questions about veterans, and I know Vin is a veteran himself and is supportive of the veteran community. We have a very long history of working with veterans, I'd say back to the beginning. And then World War I, World War II. There was a time when the GI Bill came around where we may have been 80% student veterans. When I arrived in 2011, there was 1 or 2 veterans here, and I was asked to rebuild that population. And I want to say for 2 or 3 years, we had about 20% veterans. That's 30 people when we're talking about the small numbers. We have a lot of relationships on the local, the city, the state, and federal. We have community-based organizations like Home Base. And this is an important point that I would like to make as the topic of veterans comes up. There is an intersectionality to people that I think is so important. However we identify in many ways, whatever our demographics are, you know, I'll bet that I've heard Peter say that having veterans in the program is good because they'll have a can-do attitude, and the training that they arrive with has the discipline for them to really be leaders in the program. And I'm sure there's some of that everywhere. The other thing I really enjoy about the veteran population is that it really does tie into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, we've had, I think North Bennett Street School does a really great job of, in some way, putting assumptions on their ear, putting biases on their ear, being welcoming and open to everyone. And as we talk about the veteran population, you know, I'd say some of the first students that have identified as being non-binary were veterans here, and I think that that's fantastic. The veteran population, every population, this whole concept of being welcoming and inclusive to people that want to come here for any reason, to experience public programming, to be a part of continuing education, online, and the career training programs. We're really in a new era, in large part thanks to the leadership that is here on this Zoom, and it's a great time to be here at North Bennett Street School. Maybe it's a little over what your question was, Vin, but I couldn't help myself.
And I just, you know, I'll just touch on the other part of Vin's question. I know he also really cares that we have the representation not only in our student body, but other places in our school. And I think, you know, we do enjoy having a couple of staff members who are veterans. Miguel, of course, was a veteran, and I don't tick that box, but I think that's something that we can continue to look at on our board. We're very fortunate to have good relations with veterans affairs organizations, to have a veteran on our board, but it's probably a place we can always make sure that we have good representation.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
I can see there's a question here. What are our placement rates like at this time, and which way is it trending? We heard a little bit from Emily and Peter, I'd say anecdotally, about the jobs that their students are getting. It's our entire reason for being on the career training side. And I would say our accreditor requires us to have 60% of our graduates be employed in the field 6 months after graduation. I'm pretty sure that's the number. We, on average, are closer to 85% across the board. And that number fluctuates a little bit because our scale is so small also. Sometimes we'll have, you know, the violin program will graduate 2 people. If one person decides to go to a graduate program, we'd be at 50% employability. But I'd say by and large, we're fulfilling the mission when it comes to employability, and I'm comfortable with 85%. I'm just catching up on the chat here. And if anyone else who's on our panel, if you've seen something here that you'd like to address, by all means, please jump in.
Well, I was just going to go back, you had asked Peter and Emily both about sort of the great resignation or the great redirection. And, it's always fascinated me that that's not a new story for North Bennett. That's been a long time story, but it does line up with this moment where people are really looking for meaning in their lives and thinking about maybe what they've always wanted to do, or now's the time to take a change. And for those of you who haven't seen it, there was a really terrific piece that PBS did right before, like in late winter, that just told the story that Peter mentioned, and also told a wonderful story coming out of our piano program of an airline pilot who is training with us to be a piano tuner. And it's just a good reminder of sort of the multi-dimensional aspect of people and skill sets and transferable skill sets. And it's incredibly inspiring. So it's a nice piece if you have a chance to look it up. Oh, I see someone put it in the chat. Our tech team put it in the chat. That's terrific.
I would add to the employability is the fact that we can't stress enough that you tie into the alumni and job and commission board. And that's not like here for the today and gone tomorrow. You can look at it in 10 years. You can look at it in however long. I personally used to use the job board to negotiate higher wages for myself at my last employer. The employer would be like, where are you getting your numbers? And I'd be like, right there, North Bennett's job board. So that's how I did that.
That's great.
That's great, Peter.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. It's so nice to get to see you. It's so nice to be sharing the stage here with Genie and Rob and Lindsa. It's really a treat. And it's great to have you with us. So thank you so much for coming.